Hello and welcome to this live stream. I hope you can hear me well and that you are well as well. It's been a while since I've done this now. I came to think of it, it's been several months actually, so I thought it was long overdue to do one of my Q&A sessions, live streams again. Please let me know if you can hear me well. Am I coming through on the microphone and in the camera? It's very important to know that you can actually hear me nice, no echoes or funny things happening with the audio or video. So again, please let me know in the comment section if you're actually able to see and hear me clearly. That's very important to me since I do these things not too often. I always feel I start from scratch when I'm starting up a live stream. So I'm always curious if I'm coming through. But I see one commenter saying that's okay, so I guess it's okay. So we're in Norway. I'm not German, as many things in the comment section. Still, after 6 years, I am Norwegian, living in Norway, and it's summer here right now. It's 8 o'clock, a little over 8 o'clock at the evening. We've had thunderstorms and rain today. I've had some trouble with my Wi-Fi connection, but it seems to be sorted now. So hopefully this stream will go uninterrupted. So that's good. If you're watching from another country, on another continent, at another time zone, you're welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or maybe it's the middle of the night. I don't know. It'd be funny to hear from you in the comment section where you're actually from and the time where you're at the moment. I think we have some. I think you have some guests from around the world. So the topic in the thumbnail for this live stream, and something that's been on my mind for a while now, is this: are we being scammed with buying new synths today? And by that, I'm thinking more of the higher end synths, the more expensive synths, like in the upper part of $2,000 and beyond. Are those synths a scam? Maybe. Let's see some bullet points on that. And as always, if you have questions in regards to music, synths, whatever, please ask them in the comment section. I can't promise I'll be able to answer all of them, but I'll try to answer some. And I see there's some comments already here. That's good, very nice. 11 a.m. in San Diego, that's nice. 8 p.m. in Sweden as well, of course. 2 p.m. in Western North Carolina. Awesome. Nice. So we have some people from other continents with us. You're all welcome. So about those synths again, and let me just start by saying that this is not a bashing of any brand or synths in general. This is more a thing I've thought about in the last year or so, partly because I'm always asked from people are always sending me emails. Even to this day, I at least a couple of times a week I get random emails from people asking me, often one line, Espen, which synth should I buy? ? Greetings from so and so. And what car should you buy? Same thing. How can I know what car you might like or enjoy or need? The same with synths. I have no idea of knowing what type of synth is the best for you unless you give me some reference points or you tell me your needs, etc. And sometimes they have a budget, let's say $2,000. What synth should I buy for $2,000? And when I see that much money involved in the question, I'm always asking myself or asking that person, are you after a analog synth, a modern new synth, or are you looking for something vintage or used from the 2000s or whatever? But if the person is after a new synth and they have a budget of $2,000, I'm always puzzled a little bit because I see the specs on new synths and I try new synths occasionally, not as much as in the old days where I tried pretty much every new synth coming onto the market. These days I might read the specs and check out some YouTube videos myself. And sometimes I get to try them as well. And we see new synths from Sequential, we see new synths from Moog, we see new synths from independent manufacturers or smaller manufacturers like the Third Wave, for instance. And we have the synths from Behringer, which are mostly below $2,000, and Korg has some new ones and other manufacturers as well. And the trend of the trend of today is to make analog synths. Behringer makes clones or wannabe clones of famous vintage synths, while Sequential have their reissues of the Prophet series and other things. And you have the Third Wave, which is a PPG hybrid affair, etc. And all of these synths, especially from those boutique manufacturers like Sequential and the people making the Third Wave, etc., they're making analog synths. Sequential are making analog synths, and Behringer are making analog synths. And the truth is, they're really not analog much. Okay, some of them have analog oscillators and some filter chips, but most analog synths today are 100% software controlled. They have digital envelopes, digital LFOs. Everything is controlled by Linux or some sort of operating system going under the hood. And they often have either very complex PCBs, circuitry inside, like the new Behringer. I recently saw the Behringer Prophet 5 clone they're coming out with in probably a couple of years. They're saying they have a 8-layer PCB in that, highly complex. I'm using their own words. And I'm just wondering, in 20 years, if you're going to have that synth repaired, or if something goes wrong with it after 10 years or 12 years or 20 years, who's going to repair it? How are you going to repair it? How are you going to find what components you're going to have to solder off, or what components are you going to solder on, surface mounts components? It's a nightmare. So are these synths analog? How can they cost so much when it's only an operating system going on under the hood? I'm all for the tactile experience of using hardware, and I'm all for sitting around noodling, and I'm all for having a great hardware controller with polyphonic aftertouch and all that. It's not that, and every new synth on the market pretty much can sound good or bad. It's up to the operator to make good sounds, or the presets or whatever. They're all programmable in more ways, more different ways than others. Some are easy, some are difficult to program. But they're really only digital synths trying to be analog, most of them. And can that be worth $4,000 or $5,000 like the OBX8 or whatever? I'm not so sure. I'm not sure I can recommend a person sending me emails asking for my advice on new synths. I get this all the time, actually. I don't think I can advise those people to invest $5,000 or $6,000 into a synth claiming to be analog just because it has a VCO and a analog filter chip, when everything else is under digital control. I don't think that's really reasonable, and I don't think a synth like that is worth 5 or 6K actually. So I think the manufacturers are scamming us in that regard, and I think that when the manufacturers actually make their prototypes, sending out to the beta testers, like Behringer, for instance, with their UBXA or whatever they're making, the new P5, I think that the first couple of revisions are the most analog sounding ones. They're sending those out to beta testers, and I'm pretty sure there's some analog drift maybe in those synths that are real analog drifts, but they can't really release such revisions onto the customer. So I guess that by every new firmware or revision those prototypes develop, or the manufacturers of these prototypes develop, I think that at the end, when that synth enters the market, it will be pretty much like any other digital synth or VST, claiming to be analog when it's clearly not in the full understanding of what an analog synth is. And the biggest red flag there is if a manufacturer is trying to scam you is, does the synth have a vintage knob? If the synth has a vintage knob, that should raise a red flag right there. And by adding a vintage knob on a so-called analog synth, that vintage analog drift they're claiming to or having by using the vintage knob, that is a digital feature on the synth. And having a analog synth with a vintage knob, a new analog synth with a vintage knob, should lower the value of that synth by at least $2,000 if it's a high-end analog synth. So these are things that I think are troubling at the moment with all manufacturers, regardless of the price segment. I think Hydrasynth is a good example of something totally opposite. I think the Hydrasynth is actually one of the best bargains or synths out there at the moment, which doesn't claim to be anything else than what it is. It's purely a digital synth with a hardware controller attached to it, and it advertises itself as such. It can sound analog, it is a digital synth, and it's reasonably priced. I think that is actually the synth I recommend the most for people wanting in on the analog synth craziness with a high budget. I tell them to save their money and buy a Hydrasynth instead. So this is some of the things I've been thinking about in a year or so. Maybe controversial, maybe not. I haven't paid attention to the comment section while I've been rambling on here, but I see you have some opinions on it, on the matter, and that's very nice. Roland with the Roland Cloud, not claiming to make analog synths. They're making their Roland Cloud versions out in the open. Roland gets a lot of hate for its Roland Cloud, people wanting them to make analog synths, but they're sticking to their Roland Cloud at the moment. I think that's a good thing for Roland. Roland would never be able to please the purists by making hardware synths now. No chance for Roland. It's damn if you do, damn if you don't. So it's a really catch-22 for them. And Roland, stick with the Roland Cloud. I think that's a wise decision. However, the Jupiter X and Juno X, etc., clearly glorified VSTs, of course. But that doesn't mean it can't sound good. The OBX8 can sound very good. The third wave can sound very good. And in a mix, they can sound very good. So can a VST. If you're buying a synth for production, if you're buying a synth for making sounds together with other sounds, there is absolutely no reason at all to buy anything but VSTs these days. I've started to use VSTs more and more myself this last year because the quality of VSTs is so good right now that in a mix, there's no chance to separate a VST from any vintage or modern analog, digital, or hybrid synth at all. No chance. Absolutely no chance of separating what is what in a busy mix, played alone in a room on a good hi-fi system or good headphones, having the original vintage from the 80s next to a modern remake hardware. There will be some differences. Not saying that the one will be better than the other one, but there will be differences, and people should be able to use their money on whatever they want. Of course, not debating that at all. But and I'm all for hardware control. Hardware control is nice. The tactile experience is nice. I have some vintage synths I don't want to sell because they remind me of the good times, and I have some. I get the nostalgia and the magic coming over me when I'm playing them, and that can lead to good creative decisions, good songs, good songwriting, of course. And for you, it might be that way by using your new OBX8 or whatever, and that's totally fine. I have no problem with that. So if you're after the good playing experience and you just want to hang around and have a good time, and you feel that having that third wave gets you further in terms of songwriting or whatever, or enjoyment, go for it, absolutely. But as a producer of both my own music and other people's music, and music for clients to be used in games or documentaries or whatever, there's no chance you can separate the sound from a hardware synth from a VST these days. No chance. So when I'm giving out that advice to all those people sending me emails or Facebook messages or whatever, Instagram, I ask them to be go a second round with themselves. Why they want to spend $2,000 or $3,000 on a new synth? What is their end game here? What they're going to use that synth for? And more often than not, they bought a Hydra synth or a VST bundle or subscribe to Roland Cloud or whatever. I don't think I have many people saying that they've bought that third wave or OBXA after talking to me. If they sent that email to someone else, they might have gotten the totally opposite answer, and that's okay. You should ultimately always follow your own gut feeling about what you're going to spend your money on, definitely. And so how's that for starters? Another thing, if you followed my channel for a while, you know that I bought the Sequential Prophet X a while back, which has been a fantastic addition to my live rig. And that's why I bought it. I bought it to be able to sample the sounds from my vintage gear and having access to that fast and easy in a live situation. And for that, it's been awesome. But that's also driven by Linux inside. And the problem for me now is that Sequential has given that the boot. They no longer support the Prophet X. I guess that for a while they'll be able to fix it if something goes wrong, maybe because there are some spare parts or spare PCBs lying around. Sorry, but in 5 or 6 years, if it goes south, what then? This is a 4K synth, $4,000. Maybe all I have to do is send it to the bin. Will I be able to use that synth in 5, 6 years after trouble starts to arise? Because sometimes it freezes up. I've had that happening more than once. It freezes up and I have to reboot everything to get started. The OS is a mess. The operating system of the Prophet X has always been a mess, and they haven't really, they didn't do much about it either. And now they've abandoned the synth, a flagship synth when it was introduced some years ago, and it's all down to coding. The coding department of Sequential, they didn't code it properly. The code is lacking. It's software based. The code is lacking. The same with Behringer. Behringer always end up with 80% of the synth capabilities and features, and they're lacking the last 20%, bugs and things like that. And when they release the synth at 80% of its potential because of bad discipline among the code people, they move on to the next thing. They move on to the next synth, and the same with that. So Behringer always leave us with underdeveloped software, and that's a real problem. So $3,000 or $4,000 for a synth from Sequential, big risk. Pretty soon they will abandon the synth, and you're stuck with that doorstop. Behringer cost less, but they have even more issues. So I said in the beginning, I was not after bashing any manufacturer. I'm just telling you the truth that all the manufacturers are scamming us with their new synths. But be aware that buying vintage is really not trouble-free either, because some components are almost impossible to source. Some components you need in vintage synths are being remade around the world by enthusiasts, and that's very good. Old PCBs in vintage synths, almost how trashed they are, they can be fixed. You can just run wires from one point to another to fix bad traces, etc. And they're very serviceable in terms of through-hole components and stuff like that. It's easier to maintain once you have the lid open and you can actually dive in and do some work on them. But it's not a walk in the park with some vintage synths either, like the Yamaha CS80 and stuff like that. So I never these days recommend too much vintage gear for beginners and synth technicians. Even in big cities in Scandinavia, it's getting harder and harder to find technicians that can actually service old synths, because they're dead or they're retired, they're getting old. Remember, many of these were 30 or 40 years old in the actual 80s. So they're not gonna stick around for much longer, and not too many new technicians have neither the interest or skills to service old synths. Remember, synthesizers, people, we are geeks, we are nerds. Some of us are also musicians, but if you like synths, you are per definition a geek. And that's the truth. And as geeks and nerds, we are few. There are not many of us. The synth community is very, very small compared to like cameras, photography and stuff like that. We're tiny. We're tiny. We're like a wood tick on a dog. So synth technicians, very hard to find these days, and it's not getting better. So buying vintage, well, that's a minefield as well. But again, everything can sound good. Vintage, modern hardware, VST, even a deer eaten alive by wolves. The sound of that can be used for something useful. It can sound good in the right contexts. So it's up to us to use that sound, pitch that howl from that deer down 10 octaves and add a beat. And you might have something totally AI-free to give to the world. So everything can sound good, but a lot of things can sound bad as well. And the badder it sounds, the more it costs. So be aware of that. And that will probably end the rant for today. A little, are we getting scammed by the manufacturers of synth rant? I don't know. Let's check out the comment section, what you guys are saying. I can take questions now if you want to. I see there's a lot of comments going on here. Some agree with me, some agree with me to some degree, some probably don't agree with me. And that's totally fine. This is just an opinion from a guy. I'm not the oracle here. I don't have all the answers. I only have opinions. Okay, let's see what we have here. What are the 3 vinyl records behind you? Well, I've had these for a while now, back on the behind my back here. These are 3 Tangerine Dream soundtrack vinyl albums. We have Firestarter right here from the 1984 movie Firestarter. This is probably my favorite Tangerine Dream soundtrack, maybe. It's up there. I think I have a my top 5 Tangerine Dream soundtrack albums video on my channel. Let's see if I can move away here. The Sorcerer, 1977. That was the first movie score from Tangerine Dream. Fantastic score, and made just the way I personally like to make scores as well. If I do it, just making music, and it's up to the filmmaker to use that music in the movie wherever he wants. So it's not written exactly for a movie. The director got the music from Tangerine Dream and just used it in the movie wherever he saw fit. And back here, it's Thief, Michael Mann, 1981. Another great Tangerine Dream score. So these are not repressings. These are vinyl from back in the day. So that's that. Let me just browse through quickly here. Lots of comments. Hey Espen, what are the sonic differences between vintage and modern analogs? And well, this is what I've been rambling around about for 20 minutes now, I think, about. So you can just rewatch the live stream later if you want to. I see Anders Jensen is here, or he was. Good day, Anders. We talked earlier on the phone. I know you have a lot of fans, Anders. I think some of them are here as well. Here's a question, but I don't know now what this is in reference to. What's this guitar sound? If you're referring to the music I played before I went live with my voice, well, these songs were from my last album, Dreams. And these are all sampled guitar sounds. Some of these sounds are played by a real guitarist in my studio, recorded by me, but all of them are ultimately played by me on keyboards after I've sampled them. So that's the answer to that, if that was what you meant. So let's see here what we have. For every new one here, you're welcome. Nice to have you on board. And if you've just joined in, please rewatch the live stream later for my rant about being scammed by synth manufacturers, especially the high-end boutique manufacturers. Here's a question. Do you have any favorite cheap rack effects units? Well, I've actually sold a lot of my rack units during the last year, because I feel that I can get plug-in effects are really just as good as or bad as hardware effects. So I don't have much of them in right now, but I do recommend vintage hardware rack effects like the Alesis MIDI Verb 2, which is one of my favorite ones. Really cool, cheap effect rack units, which I recommend. The Roland SRV 2000 is another. And the Lexicon PCM 70 is also another rack unit, reverb unit I really like. Maybe not on the cheap side, that Lexicon, but definitely good. If you can use the pedal form factor, I highly recommend the Strymon Big Sky, or Strymon in general. I think they make great effects units, hardware effects units. So these are my recommendations, vintage and modern, just off the bat here. So let's see. This isn't directly a question, but I think the price is a big problem. Behringer is making synths at an affordable price. Yes, the cheaper end of the Behringer synths are very cheap, and as such, not such a risk buying because they're very cheap. But they're more expensive synths like the UBXA or the new P5 coming up and their PPG clone in the brewing and stuff like that. That will be close to the 2000 mark. And you know the answer to that by rewatching this live stream. Not a big fan of the way Behringer releases half-ass coding and bugs, etc. So let's see here. Question: is it common for Roland D50s to have a key bed issue, not aftertouch but velocity? My original D50 needs key bed cleaning almost every couple of months. If it needs key bed cleaning almost every couple of months, you either have it in a very dirty environment, which I've actually seen myself. Some people live very dirty, not saying that you live dirty, but if you're living in a clean environment and you have to clean it almost every couple of months, then I don't think you've cleaned it very good to begin with. My last D50, I cleaned, 5 years ago, the key bed, and it's still running fine with no issues at all. So do it again, do it properly. That's my advice. It shouldn't develop the same problem after a couple of months. Then there might be some other issues, but not cleaning. Then you haven't cleaned it properly. So let's see. Is the Prophet XL or Yamaha Montage better for a one keyboard setup, 80s pop concert? Well, I don't have much experience with the Montage. I know a lot of people uses the Montage, so I assume it's great for live usage. I wanted the Prophet X because the way I could use the samples in it afterwards, I'm using it only as a sample machine. I don't use the synth engine at all while I'm doing my live things with it. So the way you can time stretch the samples you've brought in, or you can use them as multi-samples, the two ways combined is really what sold me on the Prophet X, because it reminded me, or I could use it as an old sampler, but with much better storage, etc., and yeah, tactile experience. So that's why I use the Prophet X. So if it's better or worse, or if it suits you better or worse, it's hard for me to say. I'm very satisfied with the Prophet X for my needs, as long as it's working. So that's what I can say about it. So let's see. I can see that some of you actually agree with me on the Hydrosynth, and that's cool. And again, the Jupiter X or stuff like that can sound fantastic, but the Jupiter X is a Zenology, a Zencore VST with a shell around it. So if you like that shell and you like that tactile experience and knobs and faders, etc., the Jupiter X is definitely the right choice for you. But you could save a lot of money by just doing Roland Cloud and get the Jupiter X in there for a lot cheaper. So that's two different sides of the coin. So let's see here. See, a lot of you guys are actually using Roland Cloud here, Roland Cloud, and that's good for you. Some hate it as well. That's totally fine. it makes no difference to me if you hate or love Roland Cloud or hate or love Behringer. That's really not my it has nothing to do with me. I couldn't care less actually if you love or hate them. I'm just stating my opinion on the matter. So whatever sounds good, whatever you fancy, whatever you like, that's totally okay, of course. I see that someone here is a fan of the Roland MKS50, the Alpha Juno in a box, and I have to say I agree with you. The Alpha Juno is one of my Roland favorites. Not a question, but interesting nonetheless. Since our toys, a VST does not satisfy gas, and we have the smiley here. And in case you're in here not knowing what gas is in synths or photography or whatever, it can be used, I guess, in any hobby. The gear acquisition syndrome, the feeling that you have to have the newest one or you have to have more gear to be more productive or have more fun or whatever. Something that riddles or troubles everyone in creativity, I guess, where you have to use tools. And for some, synths are toys, just a way to relax or having fun. To others, like myself, it is they are tools to get the job done, or they can be toys to just mess around with. They have fun as well. So for me, it's both. I have to have some tools to get the job done because my job is actually to make music, not only for myself but for others. This is the way I get food on the table. I'm making sounds and music for other people. So as such, they are tools, and for me, it's important to have the right tools to get the job done. And to be able to get the job done in my field, I depend on creativity and inspiration, and therefore some tools are better than others because some tools bring that creativity and inspiration more than others. So yeah, synths can be toys and they can be tools, and as such, I demand sound more often than or let me put it another way. When I'm making music, when I blend sounds together, I've come to realize more and more that I can easily live with VSTs because they sound so good these days, and I can get any type of sound I want. But I still like to play around with my vintage synths because those can bring creativity I need to actually compose the music. Here's a question which I think I've answered a lot of times before, but since there's often months between live streams, I'll answer it again. And the question is, Espen, who are your all-time favorite 80s synth pop songwriters from a composition standpoint? And there are a lot of people I admire from the 80s from a composition standpoint, all from soundtrack composers to pop composers. But since you're saying synth pop, I'll answer that as such. Tom Bailey from the Thompson Twins, a fantastic songwriter, which I admire a lot. Stock Aitken Wattman. If you take out Wattman, he didn't make any songs at all, actually. He just has his name there. He had the nose for what was a hit or not. But Mike Stock and Matt Aitken, geniuses in terms of 80s pop songs, and they, of course, used synths. So maybe not synth pop, but everything they made is excellent in terms of composition. Vince Clarke, of course, made a lot of good synth pop. The Pet Shop Boys, of course, I love the Pet Shop Boys. Very good songwriters in the 80s. Not so much these days, in my opinion. Martin Gore, of course, Depeche. Yeah, a lot of there's a lot of good songwriters in the synth pop community in the 80s. I also like Italo disco. On the surface, very simple and maybe cheap, very very simple compositions, but making catchy, simple synth pop songs. It's not easy. It was not easy in the 80s. It's not easy now. So there are some names for you right off the bat. I see that some had to get a new motherboard for their Prophet X, which is doable now, I guess. Not so sure, like I told you earlier, in 5 years. Good luck hunting down that new motherboard for your Prophet X in 5 years. Yeah, the Andromeda synth. I see someone referencing that in the comment section here. That's really a good example of things that was a mess from Alesis back in the day. Let's see here. Not synth related, but I'll bite on this one. Hi Espen, non-synth question, but I was wondering how you got into the vintage Casio you have been wearing. I'm not wearing that vintage Casio today. I'm wearing an Apple Watch today, but I do have, or let me rephrase it. I was a big watch buff in the past. I collected and wore watches. That was a big hobby of mine. And you have the same thing in the watch community as well, gas. You always have to have the new watch or more watches. You can't have enough watches. And it's definitely the same in terms of status and overpriced. Like Rolex, for instance, which isn't a luxury watch brand at all. But they've always been very good at advertising, and everyone thinks that Rolex is the apex watch to have, or the pinnacle of horology, which is not. But everyone thinks they have to have a Rolex. And I had a Rolex myself, and I really like the design of Rolexes, but they're really just sport watches. So branding is everything, and the illusion is everything in the watch community. So that's why I, at one point, sold all my expensive watches and just said goodbye to the watch history of my past, and just started, for the fun of it, cheap vintage Casios, Seikos, Citizens, Russian watches as well, Vostok, things like that, Orient, lots of cheap brands that are much more satisfying to me now than these ridiculously overpriced luxury watch brands, which, by the way, has some nice designs. It's not that, but they're totally overpriced in terms of what you get back. So Casios, a great way to spend your money on vintage or modern digital watches as well. Yeah, it's not actually Father's Day here in at least not in Scandinavia. I know that you have Father's Day in the US today, Brian, but we don't have Father's Day here. That was in either February or November, Mother's Day and Father's Day. And I can't remember myself, actually. February and November is Father's Day and Mother's Day here in Scandinavia. But it's a nice day to celebrate your fathers. So absolutely. Here's a question. Which album from which artist would you like to have made? Very interesting. I think that I would have liked to either be involved in Love Over Gold, the Love Over Gold album with Dire Straits. which is to me one of the most beautiful albums ever made. I've loved to play keyboards on that back in the day, which was of course not something that would have happened because I was too young, but that's an album I really identify myself with because I love it so much. And I'd also would have loved to I would have loved to work with Depeche Mode during their most heavy sample period, like Construction Time Again and Some Great Reward. That would have been a lot of fun to be involved with that album as well. So that's what I can think of at the top of my head, some straight up when asked. And here's a question, Espen: what new or upcoming synths hybrids intrigue you the most? And the answer to that is none. I'm so totally not interested in anything new coming up right now. There's not one synth that I really feel could bring something to the table where I'm at right now. I have all the sounds I need to get the job done, definitely, by using VSTs and the ones I have, which are hardware. So there's really not much that tickles me when I read about it these days. So none. I think I've answered this already in a way, but Espen, are there any major downsides to using VSTs over hardware in your opinion? And the downside is that you have to turn on the computer, open up the VST and get things going on the screen, etc., to be able to play. That is, to me, a downside if I'm in a creative mood and just want to sit down and compose or make some music, because I make my music from scratch using a piano sound or something like that, and structure out the whole composition before I take it into the DAW environment to start producing it. And of course, using hardware, to me, knobs and faders, etc., stuff like that, can be a creativity booster, which I don't usually get in the DAW. I don't get much inspiration from working in the DAW when it comes to making the songs or lyrics. So answering this from a personal standpoint, that can be downsides. Sound, however, in isolation, or rather not, the sound coming from VSTs in a production, in an arrangement, is more than good enough to use for anything. This is probably too much to answer. What synth do you still own? I own a lot of synths still, of course. So if you just watch my videos on my channel, you can see me using all these kinds of different synths in different videos. As you probably noticed, if you're following me regularly, I've started to not making, I don't make gear porn videos anymore. Not in the sense that I'm presenting a synth with the historical aspects and stuff like that, like I did in the past. Those videos did make a lot of views, so my view count is way down compared to what it was before, but that's okay, because I really don't want to make gear synth porn videos anymore. I want to make videos showing the gear used in a technical way or a musical way, how you can use it to actually make music. I no longer want to make videos showing gear for the sake of the gear itself. I'll leave that to others, and that's just a decision I've made, and I'm not going back to making gear porn videos. I'll leave that to others. I'm sick of porn. Here's another one. Espen, how do you come up with the drum patterns for your songs? And that's just me messing around with sounds. I usually have a sense of what I'm going for before I start laying down the tracks and recording sounds and stuff like that. So when I've written a song, I can hear the arrangement in my head, what type of, at least in the ballpark, the type of pattern I'm going to use, and the sounds I'm going to use. I'm just lying in bed trying to get some sleep. I just have that song in my head, and I know sort of what I'm going to do. So the next time I fire up the DAW starting to record the song, I pretty much know what type of pattern I'm going for, and I just pick out sounds. But as the production arrangement evolves, I might change out some sounds. I do that a lot, change out sounds and alter the patterns, etc. But usually it just, yeah, it's there from the beginning before it's even recorded. How did you come about collaborating with Vic 20, a fellow Dallas, Texas act? It's very nice indeed. Yeah, thanks for that. That was a very rare occasion where I actually said yes to a collaboration. I can't really remember now how it came to be, because 99% of all offers for collaborations I turned down. But I think it was something about the chord structure and the sounds he had already made for that particular song, Somewhere or Nowhere. So he sent over the separate tracks and asked me to make a top line melody and sing it and mix and master the song. So that was how it came to be. And he liked what I was doing. I liked what he was doing, and the result came out quite good, I think. So thanks for noticing. So that was that. Do you miss your JX8P? And it's tempting to say yes, but in reality, no. I have the PG8X, which still is my favorite VST emulation of a classic vintage synth, which I use for doing that 8P sound. And I've sampled my 8P, and I have it in my Prophet X, and I use that if I want to play the 8P from hardware, so to speak, and it works out very well. Very well. Another one. Right now, I'm not paying attention to who's asking the questions. I'm not really looking at that at all. So you'll have to excuse me if I pick out 10 questions from the same person while your question goes unanswered. That's not not intentionally from me. I'm just watching the question themselves if they're relevant. Have you ever used Analysis quadroverb? And if so, how do you think it compares to an eventide space or MIDI verb? And I know all of these three effects units, and I like them all for different reasons. And if I interpret that MIDI verb as MIDI verb 2, which is the one I like the most, and really the only one I think it's worth its money these days. If that's of these three, I recommend the MIDI verb 2, because the MIDI verb 2 is unique in its sound. I don't think the quadroverb sounds like the MIDI verb 2. I like the MIDI verb 2 more, and the eventide space is another thing completely in a way. So that's a really more effect or pedal I'd use on more ambient type of sounds, while the MIDI verb 2 is very good at making 80s effect sounds, reverbs, gated reverbs and stuff like that. So as for the Kurzweil VAST, the K2000 comes to mind. I used that a lot in the mid 90s. Loved it. Very advanced even to this day. So great synth. Not a question, but I'm just going to throw this out there. In regards to dust and cleaning keybeds, I use dust covers on all my gear. Almost no issues with key switches, sliders, etc. for decades, and I can second that. I also use dust covers, and yeah, absolutely, good advice. Good advice. This one answered in the first 20 minutes of the stream, so rewatch that. Hi, Espen, Tangerine Dream used the Jupiter 8 and the PPG Wave. Behringer has both the Jupiter 8 and Wave replicas on the way. Do you believe this is good for future Tangerine Dream synth fans to have access to those sounds? Well, you have access to Jupiter 8 sounds and PPG sounds already. You had that for years in different ways or means. So Behringer coming out with these synths is really not relevant to by then having access to those sounds in a cheaper way, because you have access to these sounds already. But of course, with those clones, you'll have access to the sort of same hardware unit, and that can mean a lot, of course. But in terms of sound, you have these sounds already out there. So to me, I don't think it'll make any difference. Hi, Espen. How would you split your funds in regards of synths or effects? Interesting. If you're doing 80s synth pop or 80s pop, you have to use a lot of effects, because no synths in the 80s prior to the D50 had inbuilt effects. Everything was used with a lot of effects and processing. So if you're doing really authentic 80s synth pop or 80s pop using vintage 80s hardware, you have to use a lot of effects, and as such, you have to spend a lot of money on those effects, like lexicon reverbs and Eventide H3000 and stuff like that. So it depends really. If you're going in the box today using VSTs and VST plugins, I guess the equation is the same, 50-50 on both. Sounds reasonable. Sounds absolutely reasonable. Let's see here. I want something modern and fresh, and something I can use for both studio recording and live. What would you recommend as a great 61 key synth for no more than 3,500 euros, which is about the same in dollars, $3,500. And yeah, interesting. Modern and fresh, and something I can use for both studio recording and live. So I'm guessing you're not going for 80s music particularly, and as such, maybe some new Yamaha or something that can import samples, that you can import sounds into yourself, as well as having a great synth engine, I guess. And I assume, without knowing for sure, that some of the new Yamaha models might do that. Others will have to chip in the comment section to answer that for me. Maybe Nord Lead Wave or something like that, which I'm not too familiar with right now, actually, because like I told you earlier in the live stream, I don't pay attention that much anymore to what's coming on onto the market, etc., etc. So yeah, sorry if I can't be of more help. I would have recommended the Prophet X because it has worked very, very well for me. But since Sequential has discontinued the Prophet X now, I can't really recommend it anymore, even though the price would probably go down a lot on it. So if you take the chance on buying something that has been discontinued from Sequential, I would have recommended the Prophet X, but it's up to you. The System 8 works well with the Roland Cloud. Yes, I know. The Nord Lead A1, I had that before. Actually, I liked it very much. This I'll answer straight away. What do you think about the Udo Super Gemini? I've not used it myself. I haven't been able to try it. I don't know anyone that has one. So I've only seen a couple of minutes from YouTube videos. I really don't watch much synth YouTube videos at all, so I'm totally unaware of what's going on YouTube in terms of synth videos these days. But on paper, it looks good. in terms of specs, but I have no really opinion made about it, so I can't be of much help there, I'm afraid. Same with the Polybrute, only heard it in videos. Only heard it on videos. It's the user, not the tool, exactly. This one should be answered already. I even have a day in the life video on my channel. This is my day job, making music and sounds. Has been for since before the pandemic. I quit my day job to do this. I should have kept my day job, because it's not a walk on roses doing what I do these days, because it's hard times for freelance music makers like myself. It's ups and downs, and it's not getting any better. It'll be more downs than ups for most of us during the years to follow, because of AI and stuff like that. So you really have to be on the ball these days to keep your head above waters, definitely. Here's another one, not a question, but I'll throw it up here. I was so close to acquire a Roland MKS80, but in the end I chickened out. Can't really rectify or justify all the money compared to how good VST is today. And the MKS80 is really, really risky to buy. Not easily repaired if something goes wrong with the tuning of the oscillators and stuff like that. So be very careful if you're going to buy an MKS80 these days. Great synth, by the way, and definitely a Jupiter 8 in the box, even though everyone says it's a Jupiter 6 in the box. The truth is it's between the 6 and 8, but it's not a problem making it sound exactly like a Jupiter 8. I even have a video about it on my channel where I show it, so you can hear it. That's the most important part, listening with your ears and not your eyes. Yes, I know the new Pet Shop Boys album is more back to their original sound, but it sounds way too modern. That's the problem. It's a problem for me, not for them, but for me as a listener. But they're not going back, of course, to making music with page R on the Fairlight sequencer and stuff like that. That's not going to happen. Hoping that your favorite 80s artist would go back to working how they did in the 80s, that's not going to happen, because they are not geeks like you and me. They're artists living from their old catalog now, making new music which doesn't really compare to what they did back then. So it's people like you and me that are using this old stuff and geeking around over it. Do you have any Behringer gear? I actually have a Behringer gear. I've always had Behringer gear. And let me tell you that back in the early 90s, I had the Behringer Edison. Does anyone remember that? And the Ultraflex 2. Great units. Used them on almost all the albums I made, music I made back then, and even used them live for mastering and everything. Never failed, always running. Great products. As years went by, Behringer became more and more riddled with problems. Lackluster finishing and bugs, etc. So it's definitely going downhill in terms of quality with Behringer, is my experience. I know other people have the opposite experience, and that's fine. So today, I recently had the new Behringer 369 KT compressor limiter. I have a couple of videos made with it already. I sold it because the knobs were awful. Terrible knobs. It sounded good though, but the tactile experience was beyond any nightmare I've had for the last 3 weeks, and I have a lot of nightmares. So that had to go, and now I have a couple of patch bass with some jack sockets, working on and off. So that's typical of Behringer, I guess. The connectivity in terms of physical connectivity always been a bad issue with not always, but in the last 15 years or so, not good by Behringer. And I have a headphone amplifier by Behringer, which has worked pretty okay. So a couple of different items lurking around still. Any more live performances planned? Well, no. Truth is, setting up or playing live these days, it's not like in the old days where you could get bookings from week to week or weekend to weekend. These days, as a small independent artist, you have to plan your own shows, set up your own shows, your own gigs, hire the venue and do promotion and play for the door. Uh, you have to sell your own tickets, and in total, that's really not what I'm keen on doing now. So unless someone actually booked me like in the old days, calling me saying, Espen, we have everything set up for you, can you come and play then and then, and you'll get paid so and so much, then I might do more live gigs. But it's really not that like that anymore. So I don't think I'll do very much more live gigging. It was fun doing that thing in last year, and I'd love to do it again, but not at any cost. So that's that. So let's see. We yeah, it's over an hour already. Time flies among friends. You're still my friends, right? Hope so. So let's see. What else? Hi, Espen. Which preamps do you like and why? Most of the time, I like preamps that are neutral and clear, and that's why I've gotten rid of most of the more expensive preamps that had a color to its sound, because I really don't fancy that as much. The exception might be occasionally on, yeah, guitars or vocalists, but since I do most of the thing myself these days, including singing and playing guitar, I really don't need it. So I'm using my SSL preamps, which are very clean and clear and have lots of headroom. I also have some Audient preamps, which I like, and I also like the preamps in my Yamaha DMP7 mixture, which doesn't sound very good, but they're good in a bad way, so to speak. And I also occasionally use the preamps on my Akai samplers, because running your signal through them can give some sonically nice sounding sonic benefits as well. So if you're thinking about Neve 1073s, have that anymore. Although I might go for a couple of APIs for drum. If you Okay. Did the stream disappear for you guys? I just went black here, but it seems to be all right now. What old school mammoths think about virus? Yeah, I actually like the virus myself. Did use some virus since back in the day. Not really anymore, but I've always liked the virus. So let's see what else here. Thanks for sending in comments and questions, guys. I appreciate it. It's fun to see what's going on among you guys. So definitely keep them coming. not going to keep on doing this for more than 15 minutes or so from now. So we have to come to an end soon here, but yeah, stream disappeared right when you were answering my preamp question. Okay, so if you didn't get my preamp answer, I'll answer it shortly here. I don't use many preamps these days as I did before. All the 1073s and stuff like that, it's gone. I like my preamps now to be clean and transparent with lots of headroom. So I basically use my SSL preamps or my Audient preamps because they don't color the sound as much. If I want some saturation from synths, etc., I use a DI box with transformers inside. I actually have a video already made coming up on my channel soon where I show exactly how I do that. Or I use the preamps in my Akai samplers for coloring the sound. So the only pair of preamps I might consider getting back are a couple of API preamps, because running drum sounds through API preamps is really, really good, really powerful, where the 1073s always seem mushy. The APIs really drive the sound in a pleasing way. So that's about what I have to say about preamps. So I hope that makes sense. Yeah, the UBXA, if you like it, that's fine. If you don't like it, send it back. I've not played it myself. I've heard it in a couple of videos, and I basically made my issues clear earlier in the stream, what I think about Behringer synths in terms of they're not finishing their synths. Paying close to 2,000 for a Behringer synth is really not what I recommend doing, because they'll abandon it pretty soon and move on to the next thing. And it's not even 100% of its capabilities or potential as it is right now. And good luck repairing that in the future. So can't really recommend that. But if you have it and like it, go for it, use it, and make some good music for it, with it. So, my good people, let's answer a couple of more here. Can you talk about the basic process you use for making samples? And this is really a live stream in itself, or a video in itself. So it's all about recording the sounds you like, importing it into a sampler, or sample it directly into a sampler. If you have a sampler you can sample into, which I guess is the definition of what a sampler is. Like my Prophet X, you can't sample into the Prophet X, but you can import samples. But sampling into a sampler, it's really cool. And like the old 8 or 12-bit samplers, you can really color the sound because the bit depth is less than it became later in the late 80s by using 16-bit samplers. So yeah, it's all about what you're going for. If I want that sort of lo-fi gritty sound like we feel it is now, I'd use an old sampler like the Akai S612 or S900. But even those sampling sounds at a higher frequency, or their highest frequencies, can sound pretty hi-fi, because in 85, 86, putting something into an Akai S900 would come out sounding hi-fi and very transparent. So it's a myth that old samplers have to sound gritty. They can sound gritty, but in the mid to late 80s, no one wanted the sounds coming out of the samplers sounding gritty. We wanted them to sound hi-fi and transparent, so we could fly in those vocals directly into the multi-track tapes and stuff like that, so it would blend with what was already there. So it's only now, with the very high sonic fidelity we can get now, that we have started to think that the old Akai's and Roland's sounds gritty. They don't, unless you want them to sound gritty. And if you want that, I'd use an old sampler, and I do that occasionally. So it all depends, really. Yeah. I think this is it, folks. It was fun. It was fun doing this again after so many months. If we do a quick poll here, people, I see the number of guests here are going down as well because we're coming towards an end. A quick poll, folks. Would you want me to have live streams like this more often, or is it enough every 3 or 4 months? Just asking because I'm curious if I should do it more often. So if you just could take 20 seconds to answer that in the comment section before we're closing off, I'd be interested in hearing it. While you're hopefully telling me what you think, I'll answer a couple more questions before we will sign off. What are the specs on your DAW computer? And I have a video about my DAW computer already. I'm using a 20-year-old DAW. It's a Pentium. It's an i7 with 16 megs of RAM and a 20-year-old digital audio workstation. So it's nothing fancy, but I don't need much fanciness for my DAW. I'm just recording sounds, some audio, occasionally some MIDI. I apologize for the barking in the background. If you hear it, it's my puppy going berserk for some reason, but hopefully my wife will take care of it. And yeah, so my DAW is not very new, but I have another modern laptop as well, because sometimes I have to do videos with the new software, new plugins, etc. So I have a quite new, good or adequately spec'd MacBook, PowerBook, an M1 one. So I'm using that occasionally as well. But my main DAW is 20 years old, using Cubase from 2005 or Nuendo. So not very fancy, but it gets the work done. Okay, guys, I appreciate you saying that I should do it actually more often, once a month or so. Very cool. I'll try to oblige and do that. I think it's fun myself. I think it's fun. So definitely. And let me just say that you should never, if you're asking me questions, I'm answering, but it's only one guy. I'm only one guy with an opinion, often a strong opinion, but it might not be the right advice for you in a live stream like this. So take it with a pinch of salt. Always take whatever a YouTuber say with a pinch of salt, and make up your own decision based on several views on the matter. That's my ultimate advice. So people, thank you so much for hanging out with me. I enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. So cheers, guys. I'm Espen Kraft. See you next time.